Hello and welcome to the Danger Club New Year DMQ special with me, James Lockhart, aka Velda Camblight, and
me, Dan Thompson, aka the Party DM.
Oh yeah. So just wishing everyone a very happy Christmas. Hope you all had a great festive time. Do you have a good time, Dan?
I did. This is nice, isn't it?
It is nice. It is sitting here by the fire, a couple of Chesterfields, a couple of whiskies. Oh, it's very civilised.
We're very festive right now. I don't know why we kept wearing our Santa costumes.
Well, it's getting pretty foul by now, I'm going to admit. But
it's pretty smelly in here.
It's still Christmas until the new year, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It has been a fun Christmas. Like, we've been working non-stop. I don't think that's a lie. I think everyone knows we recorded a lot of episodes right before December to get us through this because we have all been working at various various Christmas gigs. Have you had exciting, fun Christmas shows?
They were certainly there. There were fun Christmas shows and lots of varied jobs, lots of ranging from the sort of absurd to the more traditional sort of festive things. But all in all, a very successful festive period. How about yourself?
I ruined Christmas for some children. And I had some good stuff and bad stuff. Like my favourite bit was
wait. I mean, what was that about ruining Christmas for children? I mean, that's the very antithesis of Christmas.
All right, okay. I feel I buried the lead on that. It's,
yes, you did. So do you want to elaborate on how you ruined Christmas for children?
One of my gigs in the run up to this Christmas, which I've never done before, you and Drum have done this a few times in the past, was to help out Santa Claus by putting on a Santa costume and meeting kids and listening to their being a mall Santa basically for a company, and it went broadly very well, and it was a really fun experience. Except for on one day when my elf went off to find out where the groups were, and I'm sitting relaxing. The elf says, "Oh, I'm going to go and find out when the next booking is." All right, cool. Let me know. She never comes back. The next thing I know is the door opens and a family walk in. Oh, no. 4 children and their mother, and I'm sitting there, beard off, wig off, hat off, on my phone,
having a beer,
listening to our podcast.
Well, that's fine then.
And my phone has the Danger Club logo on the front. So these kids walk in, their mythical illusion of Santa is shattered, and in that moment they see Danger Club podcast and they hear Ross going, "Nay!"
Well, I hope you gave them a flyer.
Yeah. I did. I was like,
what did you do? Did you say,
"Tune in, folks"?
Sorry.
I said, "Sorry." I put my costume on and I rattled through the show while they looked at me like I was a liar.
Oh, you're right. You did ruin Christmas for those kids. Oh, wow. That's pretty intense. Well, that's an interesting tale. Sort of dovetails into, maybe the role of a DM. So you've got Father Christmas.
Nice.
He's a somewhat mythical figure, unless you're a believer, in which case he totally exists. And you would say you hold the hopes and dreams of the children who come to see you in your hands, don't you, really?
You've worked on this link. This is great.
Yeah, right? Now, the DM holds the hopes and dreams of his party in his hands, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yes, he does. He is the Lord and Master of our reality. So, there's some links there. Now, obviously, you wouldn't shatter our hopes and dreams, right?
Never. No. I'm here to make you happy. That's
he said,
what I do
the ice
for.
tinkling in his large whiskey. You can't see the smile that's on his face, but it is chilling. It's chilling.
Oh.
Now, before we get sort of into the meat of this, I just want to make a big shout out, as always, to our amazing Dangerlings. You guys are great. We've had loads of questions for Dan and a few for sort of the party, but we can't really answer those because it is just myself and Dan. But thank you so much. You guys have been brilliant this year, and really looking forward to hearing your feedback on this. So
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I think it's just us. I never totally don't trust that Scott is not just hiding in a cupboard or something and will burst out at any point to join a recording.
I really wouldn't put it past him at all. So Scott, if you're here. No, he's keeping quiet for the moment. Genuinely, he might be here. So now I know that Christmas is past. You're hearing this on New Year's Day, but I think we can cast our minds back for a moment and to a Christmas cautionary tale that's quite popular. So picture the scene. You're in a bedroom. It's dimly lit. There's a few candles guttering away.
Where's this scene going? Because this is sounding pretty sexy.
Oh yeah. It's there's a large four-poster bed. It's very comfortable surroundings, and lying in that bed is our eponymous hero. That's right. It's Scrooge McDan. He's lying there with his little sleeping nightcap on, and his copy of How to Kill Your Party and Have Them Still Like You written on his chest, and he's just sort of gradually falling into sleep, and gradually the snow's fluttering down, and it might be Christmas Day the next day. And then suddenly he hears a rattle of chains. Oh, that's right. A rattle of chains from somewhere. And he opens his eyes and he looks, and a glowing figure steps forward out of the nothingness, wreathed in chains. That's right. And it's Jacob Fardeen. That's right. The ghost of adventures past. That's right. And he says, "Oh, you think you forgot about me? Oh, you left me behind at the carnival, but here I am, going to ask you some questions about the ghost of adventure past."
Are you going to do all these questions as Fardeen? Because you'll regret that.
No, I'm not. No. And unbidden in your mind come the following questions. Now. We are going to list these. So the first question we have is from our star dangerling, Freya Hansen.
Yay!
Hey, Freya.
Hey, Freya.
A lovely, lovely lady. And she says, do we discuss things we're going to do or try off air? Or is it all spur of the moment?
Oh, we barely talk off air. Like, we're barely friends away from the mic. No, there's a little bit of chat. Like, we have a Slack and things where we run the behind the scenes of the show and sort things out. And most of that is just trying to get us all in the same room. But there is a bit of discussion about things that are going to be done. Not as much as I've done on other campaigns. Scott likes to have a lot of off air chat to like plan things, and other people join in. But everyone's quite busy but I try and ask people questions if I know the stuff that's going to come up. If I'm going to do personal plot relating to people, or if I'm going to follow up on things that people have done. I'll usually try and get hold of one of you on your own and just be like, hey, I want to explore this in this episode, or what can you elaborate on this bit of your backstory a bit more, so maybe we can use a little bit of that.
That is an interesting point as well, because of course I don't know if I've ever mentioned it, but we do provide a bit of backstory to Dan.
Yeah.
That we don't necessarily tell the other players. It's up to you to reveal, that Dan can then take details of and construct stuff. I mean, I think we've had some examples, haven't we?
Yeah, there's some of it is starting to come up. I know Shania has talked a lot about hers recently, and we'll get a chance, I hope, to explore all of them. We nearly explored Fulton's. Except for Velda.
Very slushy. Nobody wanted to hear that.
But they'll all kind of. I'm a sort of moderate believer in backstory for these things. I always want people to write a little bit of a backstory. But I don't want pages and pages of backstory on a character. Partly because I do not have time to read that. But also it's because I think the story is what happens to your character from the point the game starts. It's nice to have a little bit of background to kind of get you started. But your story should begin the moment the game begins. You shouldn't always be harking back to stuff that happened before then. That's not what we're here to do.
Yeah. And I've just thought of this. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to weave this into the narrative, maybe. It's completely your prerogative if you do. Would you find that too much detail might be a bit constricting in how you kind of get it into the story? It
can a little bit, and also for a podcast, you have to be trying to show, not tell, and you have to be trying to remember that we're an entertainment podcast, and we have to remember that our audience haven't read any of these backstories, and they don't know us, and they certainly don't know any in-jokes of like forming things. So we're always trying to avoid stuff like that. So anything that comes in has to be rooted and has to be well explained. And there's some stuff of that happening at the moment, particularly with Karagor and with Shania as well. And I hope that we're doing that. I hope that we're getting that stuff and kind of layering it so it makes sense. I
would say there's definitely some more of that coming up. You guys won't have heard yet, but there is that exploration. So. Yeah, interesting.
You heard a bit of it. It's gonna be good.
It's gonna be real good. Anyway, that's the future, and we're talking about the past. Now, this is a question that this is the question that I've sort of posing. How long had you wanted to be part of or to run a Pathfinder podcast?
For quite a while, really.
Because you're a Critical Role fan. I think we mentioned Critical Role before. They're like the original sort of podcast, but how long has it been?
Yeah, we watched Critical Role back when it first started a few years ago, and we'd already been playing for quite a long time. based on that. And then there have been other podcasts that we've listened to recently that I've liked and have felt, you know what, we could do this, we could do something with that. But it was more over the last year or so before we started the podcast. We had just a lot of people coming up to us. Like I've said, I think back in like episode 1, I've said we play in a pub when we have our social games, and we're loud because we're actors, and so we have lots of people coming over and watching, and we kept having people coming up to the table and being like, "Can I just sit in and watch a bit of this game?" And that kind of made me realize there's something we could do here. We could do a story, and we could tell something like that. And I'd done a few other podcasts up till that point that I hadn't it had never lasted beyond a few episodes, and I was like, this is something we could do, that we could run, and that we could really invest in, and could be something really fun. It has killed our Monday game as it was, our sort of social game, because I can't run 2 campaigns simultaneously.
No,
that's insane.
Yeah.
But fortunately, Ross has stepped into the breach and now runs a 5th edition D&D. The other guys, he runs that on Monday nights, and we're having a blast doing that. And it's nice to be a player in that.
I see you, 5th edition.
We see you, 5th
and we
edition.
see you, and we play you a bit. Now, when we're on the mentions of the past, I understand that you did make a shout out to some other D&D groups out there. A little dovetail, because obviously there are a lot of groups in London, and a lot of interest that people have been doing. And we got a story of other people's past plans that didn't particularly go very well. So, as we're on the subject of the past, looking back at the year we've just had, what's the sort of top
I want to read a
story?
couple of these out. So I put a shout out to some other players around London, because where we've just been in the episode with fighting zombies on the Half-Light path, and with that insane plan of someone will throw someone else down there, then they'll jump down, then someone else will get hauled up, then someone won't haul anyone up, and then it was
Benny Hill music's playing.
Yeah, it was the Chuckle Brothers of plans.
We specialise in those.
It nearly got you all killed. So I asked people if they had any ideas of plans that they had done in their games. So I think my favourite one, Lewis Collins dropped me a message. I once summoned a weasel to clear out a bar so we could sneak in. He doesn't explain how that would have helped. Why a weasel would have cleared a bar.
How big was this weasel? I'm imagining
it
something with massive arms just going about.
Just a regular. It didn't work, so they sent in the barbarian to try and kill the weasel, because they thought that might clear the bar, like a 9-foot game of whack-a-mole. That didn't work. So in the end, they just did a diplomacy check, got a natural 20, and everyone left. Standard way of fixing it. I like that was their third call.
Why was that their third call?
I like that was their third port of call after sending in the weasel.
I mean, is that a druid thing?
I don't know.
I mean, how do you summon dire weasels? I mean, what?
That would have been someone's animal companion.
Wow. That's extraordinary.
They'll be a fan of Ross. There was another Ross Salam McLaren said he once spent a whole evening looking entirely for wolf poop. That was no explanation as to what it was used for.
Right.
Just that he spent an entire game searching.
Splendid. That's what you want, isn't it? Really, just no explanation of why he wanted the wolf poop.
My mate did that in a LARP once. There was like a gathering.
Seriously,
there was not wolf poop, but there was a gathering mechanic where you could go and forage for herbs, and you got these little slips that said what herbs are, and you could use them for crafting.
Right.
And he went there every game. He went to the desk. He went, "I want to forage for scorpions," and they were like, "What?" And he was like, "I want some scorpions, please." And they're like, "Oh, whatever, man." And they just write scorpions on a bit of paper and give it to him. And he did this for about a year until the end boss turned up, at which point he came running out of the woods and threw a shoebox at it full of bits of paper that said scorpions on it, and just shouted, "Show me on your sheet where it says you're immune to scorpions."
That is commitment. Wow.
I think they killed him.
I think that's fair.
As any DM should.
Yeah, exactly. So good.
But thanks, guys. That D&D UK Facebook group.
There's some great stories there.
Great stories on there.
Yeah, it's interesting. We as Dan said earlier, we did get so much interest from people who've heard of D&D or Pathfinder, and maybe had an interest, and they come up and if you do have an interest and you're listening to the podcast, do seek out one of these groups, because it's great fun.
It is great fun. Many good communities.
So many. And now this is the last question. for the past, as it were. And this is from Miles Eve, who's another long-time fan of the show.
Hey, Miles.
Very great guy. Hi, Miles. And he says, I want to know how Dan set up the map for combat. He is clearly looking at the squares when you are positioned. Now, this comes up quite a lot because, often if you're using imagination, it's quite hard to tell who and where you are and what you're doing. So, Dan, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, Miles scares me because he pays attention.
He does.
So, yeah, this is the standard way of playing Pathfinder, and certainly a lot of D20 based games is you do increasingly now tend to play it with a battle map, and you play it with miniatures, and you are moving things around this board, and 5 feet of movement is one square on this board, or one hex, and that's kind of how you move stuff around, how you know where everything is. And it does get quite useful at later levels when everything has ranges and everything has areas of effect and all this sort of stuff. We don't tend to use that because, again, partly because we started off by playing in a pub, and so we just didn't have space for it. And also because it's never the way that I started off role-playing, hanging out in playgrounds without dice. I've never had that kind of scope to have miniatures and all this sort of stuff with it as well. And then when we did the podcast, we sort of made a decision, partly influenced by the fact that our table is covered in microphones and we don't have a lot of spare space.
I mean, some of us can't even reach the dice trays, so yeah.
but also because we know we're telling an audio story, and so we want it to be. And there have been bits I've heard in other podcasts where people will say things like, I'm going to move over there, or I want to stand next to that guy, or things that don't necessarily come across in audio. So I figure if we can make it makes it that layer harder for us, but it means that we're having to describe the scene all the time and describe physically what our characters can see and what is happening, and hopefully that makes it easier for people to know what's going on. But yeah, as Miles noticed, I do have a map a lot of the time behind what passes for my screen, because I don't
you?
I sometimes I will have one behind the iPad for particular things where it's important, like the zombie fight. Positioning is really important in that because the zombies can either move or attack, and that's quite an important thing about them. So you do
it was a lot of movement-based solution we had on that. It was basically dodging around and running away,
and that is the way to survive them, because they're very cleverly done in Pathfinder. As I'm sure you will find out in the future, is that zombies are very slow and hard to get you. But if they catch you, and if there's a few of them catch you at once, they can do horrible damage to you. So it's quite important to know where everyone is and how much movement everyone's got.
Yeah.
So I had a little mini map behind the thing, which I will do sometimes, where I'm sitting there with a pencil and an eraser, and I'm kind of just keeping notes on roughly where everyone is, so I've got an idea. And it's not so good for things like really specific stuff, like if you want to do clever things like hitting an area effect spell that only gets certain people, and but it is quite good for just knowing where everyone is. How that will work for us once we get into high-level play eventually, I don't know, because it does become more important later on when you've got spells that have, lines and particular areas of effect and things like that, and it is helpful to know that stuff. So, and especially with attacks of opportunity and reach and all this stuff becomes easier. But that said, we have played a couple of campaigns, one up to level 19 in 3.5, our most recent one in Pathfinder up to level 12, and we've gotten into sort of mid to high level play and haven't had battle maps. So I'm kind of confident that we'll be able to do it, but also we can't totally control which modules we play because the Dangerlings decide that, and sometimes they will pick ones that are quite map heavy. I'm thinking Godsmith Heresy will be quite a stress test for that. Like, it's a very different kind of setup to Murder's Mark, and more traditional. So I think there is going to be more describing of combat layouts and things like that, and we'll just have to see how it works, and I think it's going to be all right.
Yeah, and I think just on the last point of that, you've mentioned before that, of course, when you're looking at battle maps and things, it's a lot easier if you're inside. Yeah. So just like a normal computer game, if you're playing a dungeon crawler, it's much easier to see there's a corridor, there's a room, there's a this, there's that. Whereas, of course, I think when you're outside, it gets a lot harder because how big's your map? really. I mean, it could be, it shouldn't be vast if you've got flying creatures and things like that. So
I also think having a battle map can sometimes make you play the game a little bit more like a board game and a little bit less like an immersive role-playing game.
True.
I think it takes you out of the action slightly.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of them if you can avoid it, but I do see the benefit.
Yeah, interesting. Might be interested to hear Dangerling's comments on that in the future.
Do you use
battle maps? Exactly. Well, I hope you've learned something from the past.
I have, Fardeen.
Yes. Oh, now it's time for you to go. And he flaps his huge, ethereal, ghostly ears, and you feel a rush of wind, and you close your eyes.
He's ridiculous.
And he is ridiculous. And then when you open them, you feel the cold snow under your feet. And there is a small man standing in front of you, and he's glowing slightly golden like this. That's right, and it's Melton Rattlestones. That's right.
What?
And he says, "Hey, I am Melton Rattlestone. I'm eating. Do you want some hat meat?"
Yeah, all right.
All right, eat some hat meat. It's pretty rank. All right. Oh, this is the ghost of adventure's present. Hey, come with me. And he beckons you towards a window. Oh. And you stand in front of the window, the snow gently falling around you, although you can't feel the cold. And you look in, and there's your party. There's James and Scott and Drum and Ross and Colin huddled round a table with a little single candle guttering feebly, and they're passing round the only piece of festive pocket meat they've got. Drum's ready to cut it and spread it apart.
Specifically passing it, like just passing it.
Just
no,
passing
and it gets back around to Ross and Rossi.
Yeah, Ross and
No
Ross
one
has ate
accepts
it. And you're like, oh, that's Christmas. That's Christmas. And unbidden again, questions arise into your mind about adventures present.
Ooh.
Now, the first of these is from Freya again. Thank you, Freya. You are very active on the questions, which is great. And she says, I know most of you have played before the podcast. How has your guys' playstyle changed since being recorded? Now, appreciate we can't really talk for our players' playstyle, but have you noticed any changes? Has your DMing style changed, or have you noticed that we've been playing differently, or how has it been?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've there have been some changes. I think I talked in the last DMQs about how I DM differently for this, because you have to be aware that we're DMing for the extra person at the table, which is you guys.
Yeah.
So we're telling a story effectively rather than just playing for our own benefit. Because when you DM for your group, they're your audience. All you've got to do is make things entertaining for them. Whereas in this case, I've got to be thinking about things that will make this a good show. The biggest thing that makes it different is how we end sessions when we're doing this. I'm not a fan of using cliffhangers when I'm DMing games for friends, especially if you can have like a week or something break in between your games. I like to leave players with something to think about, so I'll generally leave players by giving them a piece of information at the end of a game and wrapping it up on that, rather than and you fall off the thing and we leave it there. Sometimes that's nice, but a cliffhanger doesn't necessarily give you anything to talk about on the game. So I like leaving with a thing that you guys can then go away and you're just discussing this. And we've had ones where I've given you a thing and you guys are just on our group chat just discussing it for a week until we get back to it, which is a great way to run a social game. Doesn't work for a podcast because none of you as the audience get any of that content, so it's pointless. So it's good to end those on like big fun cliffhangers. So that's quite exciting.
Yeah, I think it gives you more flexibility about, of course, where to end it. I mean, you might have noticed that each episode, some of them run over long. We've tried to stick to an hour generally, but some are a bit shorter, some a bit longer, because I think there's often a natural point to finish it at.
Yeah, so, usually you can tell. Like when we record, Colin gives me a signal when we're over the hour mark or around the hour mark. Sometimes I miss it.
We should do a live video one day of all the random hand things. My poor lamp
gestures. I punch James's lamp.
He punches it all the time, and I'm just going to
very expressive.
Yeah.
But no, the main way that
it's podcast DM as well. Literally,
the main way it's changed, I think, in terms of the way you guys play, you are more conscious of the fact that we're telling a story. We've had things that we've agreed, talking about stuff that we sort of plan offline a little bit. Like we've agreed that we're not going to spend loads of time doing shopping games, although strap in. I won't spoil stuff that's coming up. We're not gonna do too many things that are repetitive kind of stuff you would doing it, or like have a whole half hour off crafting. which is another thing that you can't sort of do. You have to kind of direct people a little bit when you're doing it, because we've got to keep the story on track. But you guys are pretty good at picking up where the story's meant to be going and kind of following that. But the main difference, I think, is how much more character everyone is kind of bringing into their characters. Everyone has really started this by having an idea of a character that they want to play, and then you've all kind of gone and attached a class and a race and things to that. I think in the past, when we've played games like you do when you're playing a social game, you're like, oh, I want to try out that special ability, so you kind of start with thinking I'm going to play that, and then you sort of fit some stuff around it, and the character grows naturally as a result of it, whereas everyone's got very strong characters in that, which I really, really like. I think that's probably the biggest change, but it's not as much as you'd think. Like, there's less messing around, and we're a little bit stricter on like content quality because we want it to be good. But it's pretty close.
Yeah, and I'd say what the thing is, we've trimmed the fat a bit, haven't we? To be honest, and also when we were talking about doing a podcast, without sounding too egotistical, we thought we were quite entertaining, and we'd had a lot of interest from people sort of about the game. And we didn't want to strip too much of that away, because obviously what I think off air we've spoken before, and of course you might have experience of when you're doing something that you love, and then you start doing it as more of a project, as a work thing, and it just kills the love. Yeah, and you're like, it just becomes a job. And we've tried to really not do that, because we all love playing, and we don't want this to become a burden. Would you? I think you've said that
exactly.
Quite a few times.
It needs to be above everything. It has to be fun, because if it's not fun for us, it's not going to be fun to listen to.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. Well, now this is a more straightforward question from Frankie Roberts.
Hey, Frankie.
Hey, Frankie. And who's your favourite character? I think that's a pretty straight up, obvious one. I think you've been asked this before on the last.
Been asked this before. Still Philippe. I'm Team Philippe. That hashtag.
That monkey.
Hashtag Team Philippe t-shirt is going to be coming. Even if it's just for me, I'm gonna get one of those.
Team Philippe.
Team Philippe. Now, are we talking PCs, or are we talking like everyone who's...
No, I was thinking about this. I would say we could open it up, because I think it's a bit unfair for you to say, obviously with the player control characters, it's going to look a bit like you're choosing a picket, you're choosing a sort of fence to sit on and say, oh, they're my favourite character. I'm sure you love us all equally.
Yeah. I love you all. No, I do. And I love... Everyone's got their own, like... Everyone has their own moments. Everyone's very good at working out who the protagonist of any particular moment is, and like letting them shine. That's why everyone kind of gets little bits.
Funnily enough, linking into the play style, I think maybe that's come out as well whilst we've been doing the podcast, is to give everyone else those moments.
Yeah.
When it's clear that it's their thing, let them have it.
Yeah.
So let's broaden it out. Let's say any character you want.
I like, because the NPCs are like my weird fictional kids, and so I have strong feelings about so many of the NPCs.
And I love the fact that some of them are planned, some of them unplanned. Yeah. Like, what's your name? Bobby Mack.
Bobby Mack.
One of my favourite NPCs. I love Bobby Mack, purely because of the voice you did for him. He's brilliant. And he just sort of got a life of his own.
But you get really weird, like, feelings about it. 'Cause I've been re-listening to a load of the earlier episodes over Christmas, to sometimes in front of children who don't believe in Santa anymore. Sorry. Just to try and recap where we got to and some of the other things. And I'd forgotten how angry I was getting at you guys about how you treated Sheriff Feldane back in the day. I really loved Sheriff Feldane.
Yeah.
And it was just this kind of... And it was exactly the right relationship that you had with her, because she was sort of based... on one of the character, on like a character from Fargo. She's meant to be like that kind of
small town cop.
Yeah, she's the small town cop who has never seen anything like this, and she's not a bad cop. She just has no way of understanding how to deal with this situation. She's completely out of her depth on this. And you guys were just awful to her, like constant, but also like
we didn't know what we're doing. Really, who are you guys? We don't know.
I mean, the fact you tried to shake her down for money, like you were like, go and speak to this person, they'll be a good contact, and you went there and were like, what are you going to pay us for us taking this information we want from you?
Well,
good old heroes.
Yeah,
but there are so many, like Chappie, I love, and I'm so...
He's a new firm favourite, I think, isn't he? We've got fan art for Chappie. Well, sort of fan clip art, really.
I'm so sorry for what happened to Shappy. I'm so sorry. It was such a Shappy and Balls. They deserved better.
They did deserve better. I mean, it was very funny. Do you think he always had Doom written on him?
I think there was a bit of I'm pretty sure.
He was never going to make that Half-Light pass, was he?
I'll swear with you, like the notes for that were kind of like Shappy has no time for their antics was one line I had written in it. I was like that's like half an episode of content right there. It's like, and they must be quiet to get through this bit successfully. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I know where this episode will go based on those two things.
Oh yeah, we were never going to be quiet. And also it was failed stealth rolls. So even had we sort of been as good as we should have been, the dice went against us, and I think it was 4 of us failed our checks. I think it was only Velda actually successfully stealthed, and the NPCs, and then everyone else didn't, did they? Yeah.
But there's some really nice. There's some good characters coming up. I think people are going to like Freya. I think. And I'm really happy with Travis and Ica, and particularly with how they relate to Shania. I think their relationship has, if you go back to episode 10, I think that's what you thinks, and you see Shania and Ica meeting for the first time, and then you get through to some of the episodes which are coming out now, and some of the stuff that's going to be going on with them. Man, Drummer's been doing a great job on some of that character. Like, there's so much great stuff there, and so much stuff we're going to be in. And there's an episode coming up in a couple of weeks, which has, I think, my favourite NPC of all time showing up in it. I hope he comes back again.
So there we go. Something to look forward to in the new year. And, okay, so we've got sort of another question here from Freya. Again, you might see the same names. They are brilliant. They are sort of some of our star dangerlings.
Hardcore. Do we need another name for like the elite dangerling? For like,
I don't know.
Let's not start
that. No,
pitting them against each other. It's my natural DM tendency.
Would you be up for that? But no, they've been great. Lots of questions from them. And Freya asks again, how much preparation does Dan do in regards to DMing, especially considering you spend most of your time off-piste?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah. Generally, it varies a huge amount, but generally, I reckon it's about 2 to 3 hours of prep for every hour of content that ends up on air.
He's not joking either. He does a fierce amount of prep. We mentioned it, didn't we? That's why our Monday night game has now Ross DMing, because it's a huge amount of work you put in, isn't it?
It is, and it's hard to quantify because it's kind of, I'm doing little bits of research all the time. Me and probably Colin do a lot of work off air because Colin does all the editing. And then send stuff over to me to upload.
Big up Colin.
But he and I were working furiously in the run up to Christmas to get all the Christmas stuff ready to go. And then finally stopped and got to relax for a few days. And like a few days later, we were chatting and I was like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And he's like, I'm remastering some of the early episodes because I can't let it go." And I was
that's what he does now.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm reading a book about the Darklands, which might not come up, but might just because.
I mean, I'm sure that a lot of DMs out there, if they're listening, feel the same. Because how deep does the rabbit hole go? How far do you go with your preparation?
It does, and it's a weird thing because it's kind of, we're trying to be true to Pathfinder, and that's why I want to do a lot of research on Galarian and the world and really understand this, because the better prepared you are, the more you can let people go off piste, and the more you can just explore.
It's the ultimate sandbox, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you want to be able to answer that question. When somebody says, "I walk off the screen to the left," you need to be able to tell them what's there. And sometimes it can be really fun to just make it up as you go along. Hence, Carpe Diem. The river sharks.
And the river sharks. That probably our oddest.
That was the strangest formula. And that really was almost entirely like made up as we went.
Yeah.
But because we've done a lot of homebrew stuff recently, like we had a big homebrew section bridging between the two modules.
We did Lily and the Lake.
Lily and the Lake, which someone is running, by the way.
Really?
Somebody messaged me to tell me they are now they're going to run that adventure for their adventuring party.
That's so cool. As a little one shot.
It's like a little one shot, because I posted some of how I did it on our Tumblr, and so they've taken that and they're going to run a session of it. So. if they manage to get it done in less than a month, they will be better than us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's
but yeah, you have to kind of. But like, if it's a social game, you don't necessarily have to have all that prep. Like, you can just make it up, and it tends to lead to a longer game, but it can be a lot of fun. But I think for the fact that we want it to be quite tight and we want it to be quite structured, I do quite a lot of prep. I do less than you might think for some things because we've been playing a long time, and I ultimately kind of know what all of you will do in most situations. Like, you tend to react to certain things as players in sort of similar ways.
Triggers.
Yeah. So I can see a thing and be like, I know Ross is going to do that if this character walks in, or like,
or there's a high percentage.
There's a good chance.
Drum's just become a father, and of course anything child based, he's just going to go all over it. Because he's got that maternal in terms of the game.
Yeah.
But that paternal instinct is very strong with Drum. So we've all got our triggers, I think.
Yeah, placing children in danger around Drum has become something of a DMing
it's
crutch.
A given. It's an absolute given, isn't it? He just and watching him is extraordinary. He just like, no, I will save all the children, which is very, very commendable. And but he's really, really passionate about it. Interesting. And now this is a sort of a general question, but now we've reached this sort of this mid stage in our journey. What do you feel when you look at where the podcast is right now from its humble beginnings a scant 6 months ago?
I am so happy with where the show is now. The fact that it's 6 months has just flown by.
It really has.
And the number of people who listen to it, like, we don't know exact numbers who listen to it because Apple don't tell you that, but it's quite a lot of people, and it's certainly more people than I would have expected to listen to me and my friends playing Pathfinder.
But not that egotistical. We really didn't expect many people to listen, but
and just some of the stuff like going to MCM this year, next week, last week, whenever MCM. Who knows whenever?
Well, do you know what? Actually, because we are recording this 2 days before its release.
Yes.
So we are actually almost in the moment.
What?
This is probably the first time we're actually, pretty much on the time. MCM is done, and it was a phenomenal experience.
There's going to be a tipping point where we're actually closer to the next MCM than we were to, where those jokes actually start making sense again because we're a broken clock. But no, going to that and like meeting people who were fans of the show and meeting some of the amazing artists who have done some work.
Fantastic.
and who are who have sent in artwork, just incredible stuff. And it's just the most exciting thing. I've had it with my comic book when people have done fan art, but this is just something else because this is something completely. There's no visual reference for any of these characters. It's not like people are doing sort of copies of stuff they've seen in my comic book, which I don't draw. I write, but people have envisioned these characters just based on what we've described, and they've drawn them. And some of these things are just. It's just amazing, and I'm really proud of the quality of what we're doing. Like the episodes which are coming out, I genuinely think are the best ones we've done.
Yeah.
And you really do have some good episodes coming up, and it's everything down to the audio quality. And like what started off as 6 of us sat around a Yeti mic in Colin's kitchen.
Yeah. On the creakiest chairs in England.
We weren't allowed to move because the chairs would creak and it would pick up, and it was. And now we have our, we have a mixing desk. We have almost a permanent studio in your bedroom.
Yep.
Bedroom is a way of downplaying.
Yeah.
It is an enormous room.
It is an enormous room.
But we've invested in loads of kit. We've got a load of new microphones that we're going to be taking to our next record.
Everyone's going to have a pop shield for our next recording session, which is a huge thing. If for those who don't know, it's a sort of thing that stops plosives in front of your mic.
Yep.
But it's all sound quality, isn't it? It's all investing into
sorry to fans of plosives.
Yes.
And of your headphones popping in your ears.
Peter Piper is not a friend of ours. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, but I couldn't be happier. Like, also, I'm ambitious about it, and I think that's something that's come across while we've been doing it. And you guys know me well enough. I think when we came up with this idea, that was like, we're not going to do this by half. If we're doing this, we're doing it. And there have been points where we've said, and little things have come up like, oh, we could do this recording, but one person maybe couldn't make it, and so we'll have to see. And so far we've avoided that. And my mantra has always been that we want to be the very best at what we're doing at this.
Yeah.
We may not be right now, but our goal is to be the very best at doing this.
Yeah.
And everything we do should be geared towards doing that, because people have been kind enough to invest their time in listening to us, and I want to give them a really good show back for it. And I think we're on track for that. And the plans we've got for next year, how we're going to wrap it up, both in terms of sort of the quality of it, what we're going to do in terms of other events, but also some of the story. Like, now we're far enough into it that I can really get into planning stuff ahead and laying seeds for stuff that's going to come good later on, and and building a story that we can all invest in. I'm really excited about where we're going.
No, that's nice. Me too. And with that, Melton Rattlestones steps forward and says, "Hey, here, roll this 20-sided die," and he gives you a dice, and you roll it, and you roll a natural 1.
Oh.
And then you realise that all the numbers are ones. It's a natural 1 D20. And you step forward onto a pit trap that you didn't spot. And you fall and you fall and
I've
you
had
fall.
this nightmare.
Yeah, right? I bet you have. And you fall and you fall and you land. You land in darkness. And all you can hear is the soft sobbing of your party members around you in the darkness. And then as you grow accustomed to the light, you see a tall, robed figure standing before you, a cowl pulled out about their head. And they gesture at you, and they say, "Hello, how's it going?
Hello.
I'm the ghost of Adventure's future, and I, hey, right?
Are you just doing this because you know Colin's not editing this episode, so we won't cut it out?
No.
Big up, Colin.
Big up, Colin. We love you. Well, no, because I just need to. Anyway, we'll explain the ins and outs of my story. You're
I'm sorry.
Scrooge McDan.
Carry on, spirit.
and he gestures towards a fire, and within it, you see these questions.
Ooh.
The ghost of
Burning
Adventure's
questions.
future. These burning questions. Now, the first one is from Frankie Roberts. Now, this is something that comes up quite a bit, but how much do you try and lead us guys in the right direction for the story? Mm-hmm. Or do you just leave it all to chance?
I don't leave it all to chance, because this is a show that we're doing for people to listen, so we do need to progress to a certain point. And also because I know what the end goal is at a certain point, because we voted on a module that we have to get to in some way.
Yeah.
And you guys are pretty good at usually kind of guiding it along. Sometimes there are hairy moments, like when some of you are like, "Oh, we could just take over this base and live in Ilsurian forever," and it's just like, I mean, we can't.
Do you know? And weirdly, Scott is the one. He's a secret homebody. He loves his bases. I think he's a ship, a mountain base, a cave, a hole in the ground. He's like, "Guys, we could make this our base. Seriously. We could make this our base." It's like, no!
He just wants to settle down.
He just wants to settle down. Like, yeah, it's all an act.
That's his ideal fantasy world, is where he can just settle down and put his feet up, which is for many of us. I think that's it. No, but he knows that, and he's very good at like putting that out there because otherwise people would rightly ask, well, why don't these characters think of doing that? And then it's argued out and people sort of move on. But that comes up that can come up in social games as well. You have to know, sometimes you do have to guide the party, and you have to know how to do it in a certain way. Like it came up in a campaign way back where you guys refused to work for a particular NPC who had a quest for you.
Lord Tarn.
And it was set up as, this guy's a bit sketchy, but he's the only one offering work at the moment on the frontier. Are you going to take some potentially illegal work or some morally questionable work, or how do you to keep feeding yourselves, and how do you do it? And everyone flatly refused and wouldn't do it. And so I had to decide what to do. And I basically ran a kind of fallow month, and we had a whole game session, whole afternoon, where not much happened. There was a lot of downtime. And there was some little side quests when you guys didn't make much money. And it was a way of, without trying to punish everyone for saying you didn't do the thing that I'd planned, because that's part of the story, we'll go with that. But it's also to try and get some realism in this world of like, well, you have turned down the only work that there is. Yeah. So now you're unemployed for a month, and we have to and we'll play with that, and we'll explore that story, and we'll see where that ended up taking us on a different route. And so you can kind of...
I think that's a great example.
Yeah, and
it was a hell of a story arc. But by the end, he turned out to be the arch nemesis, didn't he?
But it would have been the same in... it would have been the same if you'd stayed in Ilsurian. It's kind of trying to communicate that. It's like, well, there's nothing happening in Ilsurian. Are you going to settle down and like fish? Like, there's nothing to do here as adventurers. You need to get out into the world and explore and travel. because you staying in one place very rarely. Adventure doesn't come to you. You have to go out and find it.
Well, I mean, that's Velda's watchword, isn't it? Because I described him as the armchair adventurer when we started, because he's to make it peaceful.
I think it's getting easier now that we're kind of getting more character stuff, because I can give individual character hooks and give reasons why we're sort of going to places. And they're easier breadcrumbs to pick up on. The only times I really kind of do direct, like, out of character stuff is if we're doing a particular episode. The best example was recently in The Passenger, the episode we just had on the boat where Ica was discovered and everyone has a lot of chatting with each other. I said to everyone, I said to you guys beforehand, I was like, we're going to do a lot of character explanation at the moment. We're going to give everyone, I want to give everyone a bit of time to breathe. So just be aware of not crashing each other's moments. And just kind of don't just walk into the room. Like, if you're not in the room, just assume you're not in that scene. And I kind of queued everyone up on that. So I would say, oh, and Velda, you walk in now, and that's your cue to kind of join the scene. And it was just a way of structuring a way of getting a lot of character and a lot of exposition into one episode without it turning into everyone shouting over each other. Because you have to make sure everyone gets their moment in something like that.
You do. And I think your point about making it an organic and a natural moment, of course, when you're traveling on a boat, you are in close confinement, but it is that kind of thing that you do. You stand at the rail and look at the scenery and you talk, and you have a chance to speak, and also for you as the DM, it's unlikely things are going to happen. I mean, a giant kraken comes whooping out the river. Nah, you just poddle along going to wherever you're going. So, yeah, I think it was it worked really well.
The entire Lily adventure was technically a random encounter, if you want a look behind the scene. I rolled on the random encounter table for rivers, and it just came up as ghost ship with no explanation.
Really?
Yep, and from that I wrote that adventure.
Oh, no way.
One of the many fun things that I think it's in the Game Master's Guide. It's just got a table you can roll on if you're traveling on a river of something interesting that might happen. And that just came up, and so I just wrote an adventure based on that one line.
There we go. There we go. And I think that's quite a nice note to any future DMs out there to make use of these resources. Don't always feel you have to come up with the ideas yourself. I think there's a lot of background character stuff as well. If you're rolling a character, you can roll on a table and just it's ideas. And even though we've been playing for years, we still use those. Because it gives you an idea that then you can expand upon and maybe eventually discard the original idea altogether. But it just gets your mind working on what kind of stuff could happen. Yeah,
tables are great. They're great for giving you inspiration to jump off on and stuff. And all of the back matter stuff is just good. They're just story ideas. If you can get something, one thing that and usually you can tell if you're reading through a thing and something jumps out at you, something about it just says, that's cool. Like, I just saw that as a ghost ship. I was like, that's a nice idea. And then from that, I'm like, I know I can write an adventure about that because that is the one that's jumped off the page. That has caught something in me and I can write something with that.
Yeah.
I love throwing ghosts at you guys.
Oh, you do?
You hate ghosts so much.
And I hate ghosts so much. So much. Now, this is another question from Frankie. I know I'm doing two from Frankie, but this is a very good question. And one that has been on the minds of the Dangerlings, of everyone who listens, and more importantly, us as players. But she asked the very pertinent question, how much more adventuring before any of the characters become any good at the things they do? like with spells and whatnot. It has been a very gentle curve for our characters' experience. Do you want to elaborate a bit on what I mean by that?
So, the way experience works in Pathfinder is you gain experience for solving encounters successfully. And when you have a certain amount of experience, you level up. And you can run it in, there's actually 3 modes. You can run it on fast, medium, or slow advancement, and the thresholds go up or down depending on how long a campaign you want. And sometimes you can track it offline, you can track it in the background and tell people. And I kind of track it in the background just to give me an idea of where people should be relating to the adventures they're running. But also because we're playing particularly leveled adventures, I do kind of pace the leveling of the party. It is kind of artificial in terms of I'm kind of like, okay, this is the point in the adventure where you need to be this level in order to progress on it. So that's where we're going to do, or it's the right moment to do a level up.
Right, okay.
It's not as far off as you might think in terms of, in terms of consistency. You first leveled up around episode, I think 17, 18, something like that.
It was quite far through, yeah.
Yeah, it was right before you made the final assault on on the thing. I think it was
on the warehouse.
Yeah, I think it was Danger Daycare you leveled up in, or maybe Bad Manners.
I think we fought Moncolio.
Yeah, you just killed Moncolio,
Yeah, and that was the catalyst to be like, boom, okay, fine, you've learned some stuff.
And then you've been through a similar number of episodes since then, so you're not far off leveling up to level 3, which will be interesting. I love that Colin doesn't get his spells till level 4. Like, we're going to be over a year of gaming before Colin gets, and he's technically a spellcasting class.
Really, yeah. It's going because spellcasters tend to be very, very weak low levels, and then they become very, very powerful late levels.
Definitely.
So you've really got to shape it. I mean, you might have noticed Velda's just pew-pewing his way through the adventures. But an interesting question occurred to me whilst you were answering that.
Yeah.
Would you say that the most interesting part of a journey for a group is the beginning, when people are a bit rubbish, they're not very good? Is that more interesting than when later on when they're flying and they're shooting sort of god bolts from the sky and things like that?
As a DM, I love low levels. Ask any DM, they will say the low levels are the fun ones. And if you look on Paizo's website, there are twice as many low-level adventures as there are high-level adventures. And part of that's because, you have to play through all of those to get to the high-level ones.
Yeah.
But it's simpler, it's rawer. The stakes are constantly higher because you can die at any moment. There's no, when you get to higher levels and you have someone in the party who can raise dead, then it becomes like, well, I mean, how big are the consequences of dying if we can just bring people back? Although you guys don't have a cleric, so
no, we don't have a cleric. I think it's nice as well that there can be things that we just can't beat. If a dragon pops up, there is no way we could possibly defeat it. We are as weak as everyone else. Whereas, of course, if you haven't played these games by sort of level 20, you can strangle a dragon with your bare hands. It gets pretty out there. I imagine that's very hard to DM.
It can be, and you have to because monsters at high levels have so many abilities and so many immunities and so many things, and unless you're using something like Hero Lab that tracks all of that, you're doing all of that in your head while you're running the encounter. And it can get quite mind-boggling with the maths. But also, they can be some really epic encounters. And when you can just do, when you can have, a level 10, 11 fight, and you're just make a will save, fail, you're permanently blind. Something like that. Huge things like that happening. And then maybe there's a spell that can fix you, but it's in another town. Or, you've got people teleporting across the world. And, it throws players as well, because you have this weird progression as characters where in the low levels you're terrified of everything because you're tiny fragile eggshells, and then you hit about level 6 or 7, you get this weird adventure mid-level hubris that sets in where everyone becomes slightly dickish towards NPCs because you're more powerful than every regular person that you meet, but you're not necessarily that godly power. You haven't learned responsibility to go with that power.
No.
So you get this thing of people being like, well, why should we help you? We're more powerful than you. And everyone becomes just a little bit ruder to common people.
Yeah.
And I always try and get across the idea that guards are a bit scared of you now, or these. And then you get this thing once you're over 10th level, you're the most powerful people in that kingdom. And you get moments where players will be like, why is there not a priest in this? Why is there not a powerful cleric in this city? And you're like, you're the powerful cleric. Yeah. You are the most powerful people in this kingdom. You are their version of Hercules.
Yeah.
You can't look to anyone else to help you now. You have to be these people. And that itself gets quite interesting. I love that relationship between players, because part of this kind of game is your characters do get detached from the world that they become from, because they get so much more powerful. And you look at retired adventurers in all the NPC guides, and they're only level 5, 6. That's kind of the standard thing of a hero who retires from adventuring and founds a town. He's usually a level 6 fighter or something like that. Yeah. And you guys will blow through that, not super
maybe.
Quickly. Yeah, but level 3's coming, and it's going to be exciting.
It's true. And I was going to ask a question about the future, but I've altered it given the course of this chat.
You are a wizard. You can.
I am, and I'd like to know. We've talked about the obviously coming up with adventure and the preparation you do. We've been following Paizo's excellent adventure modules thus far, Murder's Mark and now the Gosmith Heresy. Any homebrew on the future? Do you see homebrew being something that you might do based on a vote?
There will be some homebrew. It's going to be there'll be homebrew bridging adventures, but also it's going to become much more ingrained into the adventure now.
Okay.
Like there were tiny bits of it in Murder's Mark, like obviously, like we talked about the skulks being homebrew just because you walked off map, and little bits like making the temple in the module guide is Elistril, which is a god of sort of frontiers. I made it Yomadai because it's Colin's god, and so there was just a link there to. But now we're really embedding character stuff into these modules, which is what you should do if you're running them yourself, and you're making them personal to the players. You want anyone to be able to run one of these adventures, and it always be different depending on who you're running it for, because of the different things you add to it. So this homebrew is going to be creeping in a lot more, but it's going to be interwoven with the main story. And we might find, we're really leaving it open to where the story takes us. And it might be, if it takes us in a section where there's something we can explore that we haven't done yet, that is better told through homebrew than through a module, we might do another, I don't know if we'll do another 10 games of homebrew in a row we did, but we might, and we'll sort of link it up there. But there are so many great modules that I want to play. There are so many good ones coming up.
And they are good.
There's some really good ones.
Interesting. Well, now we're going to come to the last question of the Ghost of Adventures future. And this is from Louisa Luxford, who is actually my sister, who is a big fan of the show, been listening since the beginning. Hey, Louisa, big shout out to Louisa. She's so excited to be asking a question. And I thought this was a particularly good one. So she says, I'm in awe of your awesome, cool, calm in the face of nonsense and diversion from the intended, and your truly imaginative DMing. However... I can't help but wonder if you miss being on the flip side and playing a single character instead. Do you see yourself as a permanent DM for the Danger Club, or will there come a time where roles could change around amongst the group?
Ooh,
what a good question. And I don't think we've even talked about that within the group. So, what do you think?
I really like DMing. I find it hard to play one character for very long.
Is that because you're so used to playing NPCs, do you think?
I think there's a little bit of that, but I also can get bored quite quickly, and I want to try out different things, and I always want to be... Because I'm really in it for telling stories. I don't care too much about the sort of abilities and things. And I'm the same when I play any games. I'm constantly re-rolling new characters all the time to try new different abilities and things. And I'm enjoying... In our social game at the moment, I'm quite enjoying playing for a change, and it's quite nice. But at the same time, also... Ross is quite new to DMing, and so I've helped him out a little bit with that. Not loads, like he knows what he's doing on it. He doesn't need me very much, but there's I've still got that element of it's a game system I don't know, so I'm learning the game as well, and that's kind of has an interest in it. I could see a chance. We have had Scott has DM'd in the past. Obviously, Ross is very good at DMing. I could see some good adventures being run by any of us. I don't think it would work in the course of one story. I think you need a consistent dungeon master, because there are horrible things in store for you that none of you know, and I'm not going to give any of that away to someone so they can run a game.
No.
But if in the future, if we were to expand into a second show, or if our schedules ever allow for that or anything like that, maybe we could see that happening. So we could kind of bring a fresh take to it. But I enjoy playing. I play a Roll20 campaign. I've got a paladin and that, so and I like playing on there.
You scratch that itch.
Yeah, a little bit. I find it quite hard to stay up to date with to remember what happens in sessions when I'm not right in the middle of organising all of it. When I'm playing, I come back and I'm struggling to remember everything that happened last week, because I don't have all the notes and everything in front of me. It's just I'm just not used to it. It's just an alien world to me.
Or lack of. I mean, I have to point out that sometimes Dan's notes have just said winging it, and I joke you not. That is that. But generally, yeah. I think we've talked quite a lot about the preparation you put in, the 2-3 hours of work before each episode, and that is also, sort of made shorter because you do have a vast amount of experience and knowledge based on it. I mean, I'm not, feeding your ego at all, but like you said, you've been playing this since you were in the playgrounds, haven't you?
Yeah.
And, that interest in the lore, that interest in the world, it helps like any job you could imagine. Having the years of experience means you don't have to look up the tables for a background of this. You kind of know the level of this. You know that if somebody does that, this is going to be the consequences, and all those many, many questions. So there is a practical consideration, isn't there, to setting as a DM.
And it works for the show because it lets you guys focus on character. When you have a nerd like me who can be like, no, it's actually a plus. It's actually a +4 bonus, or you have to, you can't combine this with this, or where you have someone like me who can helpfully check up on abilities that you've used. For example, like if there had been a long Christmas break, your DM who would have had time to go away and fact check any abilities all of you have been using and find out how they actually work in the rules.
There we go. That's the sort of
look forward to some chickens coming home to roost in the new year.
Oh, jolly good. That sounds lovely. And I think also, I'm sure that any DM out there will feel this the same, that I'm sure playing even with close friends can be quite intimidating sometimes, because we'll try it. If we think we can get away with it, we'll chance it. I mean, we've had the whole, it's a surprise round, so let's just shout at the DM as quick as we possibly can, and that's how surprise rounds work. It's not. And you, as a DM, I imagine, have to be pretty hard line sometimes.
Yeah. This has helped be doing this as a podcast. The one really, really good thing it's done for me as a DM is made me toughen up with all of you guys, because I let you get away with so much stuff in the past. I've reversed deaths that have happened because people were upset, or I've done all this kind of. Now I'm like, no, people are listening and they will hold me to account, so we are doing this right. But also I've learned, that's something you learn as you go on, is actually you can just trust in the rules, and if you need a good group of people to play with. You need people who are mates and who will just run with it.
Yep.
But you can just trust the dice, and you can let the dice tell the story, and you can let the things happen. And if someone dies in a weird way, then they died in a weird way, and you run with that. And you don't have to keep tipping the scales to do what you think the story should be. You can let the story evolve on its own.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the things that we all love about the game is the random element by the dice. So many times they fall true. And actually, when you should be surprised, you're surprised. And when somebody should die in a weird way, they do die in a weird way. Even though actually, statistically, it was more likely they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But it just feels right. Right.
Can you imagine, you falling down the pit? The odds...
falling down the pit.
Being dropped down the pit. Okay.
Pushed.
The odds of that happening. Again, because we didn't have a map, we didn't know where everyone was. When I said, I'm going to roll this dice, if it comes up... I think it was a D8.
Oh, that pit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, if it comes up as a 1, something will happen. I was like, it's not going to there's no chance that this will happen, and it did, and it was one of the funniest moments in the whole show.
It really was.
And you nearly died.
I nearly died. I nearly bled out.
But also that was also combined with a little bit of hand tipping, because I was like, we're not going to run this in rounds, because if we do, I think Velda will perma-die, and that's a really...
Well, we had to allow the group just to laugh. And to be honest, it was really funny. It was one of those moments that we did not script. That is pure... Just the chance of the dice, and it worked so well because it was Velda as well. It was very good. Very good.
Poor Velda.
So we've come to the end of our journey, and you wake, and you're lying in your bed, and the sunlight is streaming through the shutters, and you feel that maybe it was a dream, but maybe you could learn something from this. And thinking ahead, I don't know. Do you have any lessons you've learned? Any predictions for the future? Where do you see the next 6 months going?
What day is it today?
What day? Buy a turkey. Some pocket meat.
I'm going to go to Bob Cratchit's house.
Good.
And I am going to release 2d6 kobolds in through his window and just let him reap some experience.
You have learnt nothing.
I think we're going to have some real fun coming up. I think we've got a very different adventure to Murder's Mark kicking off now. We've got some...
We're starting to get into it now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're I think Kermaga is one of the most exciting environments that we've ever done adventures in. I think there's so much character to it and so much stuff. And I think there's a lot of a lot of you guys coming out now in the story, and a lot of relationship, like the stuff with Velda and Fulton is developing and just getting better and better. And
I've got to say as well, I love it. And in the pit, like them back to back in the pit, like
know, right?
unlikely allies. Again, just by the actions we took, love it.
Well, that kind of like. That sort of, because we were talking about characters' ages on the thing.
We were, yes.
And that made me think, because somebody asked us about how old all the characters were, and we kind of did a little whip round, and we found, was it Caragor's 30, which is
standard,
and half-orc years are the same as you. Fulton is 40, which in dwarf years, because different races consider adulthood different. Dwarf years, Fulton is 15 years old, which explains everything about his character.
It really does.
Velda's the weird one, because Velda is 40 as well in normal years, which is, according to Sylph years, 17.
Yes.
But that makes no sense to me, because Sylphs have no culture. Like they that's the thing about them, is they appear randomly throughout the world. There isn't a Sylph society, so they have no concept of what adulthood is.
No, they do. And actually, I'm just going to. We did have a question from Miles Eve.
Yeah.
And he did ask, "What are Sylphs?" You keep referring to them, and I don't know what they are. And
you can answer this one.
I can answer this one. They are humanoids, people who are descended from air elementals. So it could be some sort of, I don't know, think of it as what you will, some genetic mixing or things like that. But they don't have to be hereditary. They're not, like, as you say, there's not a culture of sylphs, but they are somewhat of a sort of magical anomaly.
Just means a wind genie banged your mum.
Basically.
It means it's somewhere in your heritage.
It's somewhere in a heritage, a recessant gene that comes out, and they have blue swirls upon their skin, and they tend to be followed by a sort of a gentle breeze, especially when they get angry, which
gusty
is quite
wind.
a gusty wind.
But they're loners.
Yes.
But and one of their traits is that they're obsessed with each other. That's what they're like. It's because they never meet other sylphs.
No.
When sylphs meet other sylphs, they get really curious about them, and they spy on each other, and they try to learn everything they can about each other. They're just compelled to try to find out. And it says in the book that usually those sylphs either become firm friends or kill each other.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And we've yet to meet another sylph. But I think that kind of explains some of Velda's. He's quite awkward, you know, and again, sort of 17. He's a juvenile, really. I mean, he's 40 years old in our years, but he's.
But it makes sense that he would behave like a 40-year-old human, because he's been raised around humans. He's got no he doesn't know he's going to live for 600 years. No. He's not. He'd be lucky to make 41.
I think the average lifespan is about 260 years.
Yeah. But the crazy one, like M doesn't know his exact age. He's about mid-30s, but he's half elf his human years. He doesn't know for sure.
I think we explained that, didn't we? He's
Shania is 378 years old. Drum was really specific on that when we asked. There was a lot of debate, and that came, but which is about 40 for an elf.
It's about 40 for an elf, and an interesting thing that obviously he's been walking the earth somewhat.
Yeah.
We've now learnt a bit of why she's been doing that. 100 years.
Yeah.
100 years she's been walking the earth. I mean, it's a long time. Really interesting character stuff.
And like, because elves and drow, they don't consider you to be an adult until you're at least 100. Which doesn't mean, like, it's quite hard to get your head around.
You can't buy booze.
Yeah. Can't drive.
Can't drive, that's it, you know, yeah.
You can join the army at 75.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. But, yeah.
But I was like, does that mean that, like, do they develop slower? Are they just like, do they have the minds of children?
Acne for 50 years, just be like, oh my God.
But I think it's just like culturally, elves are really snobbish, and they just won't give you any responsibility until you're that old, and it doesn't mean that you're an idiot. But yeah, Shania's been around for a while, so this stuff that's happened in Shania's past potentially happened quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of scope for where it could be by now.
Yeah, exactly. And if she has found her son, how old is he going to be?
Yeah.
We don't know. All stuff coming in the future. But I think that's going to draw our sort of our special DMQs to a close. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think it's been really insightful. Thank you, Dan, for being here. And it is New Year's Day.
Yeah.
So we're raising a glass of whiskey, saying Happy New Year's. To all our dangerlings out there, Dan.
Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year. It has been a great year, and I think we love you guys, and we're looking forward to a fresh new year full of adventure.
Yeah, we are. I wanted to sign off by like just giving you guys a a thank you for listening to us over the last year, and wishing you luck for the year ahead. I think the way we get into games like this is, I think the reason that they speak to us is that they mirror reality.
Yeah, Felder leaves.
He's actually walked out of the room. He's actually walked out of the room. What have you? I will kill your characters. No more Happy New Years. No, this is. I am Team Dungeon Master.
Oh, yeah,
Team Zombies. This is over. I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. You're the worst.
What?
Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.